from the Inclusive Bible. Hear this strange tale about a royal wedding banquet. Then Jesus spoke to them again in parables. He said, "The kingdom of heaven is like this. There was a ruler who prepared a feast for the wedding of the family's heir. But when the ruler sent out workers to summon the invited guests, they wouldn't come. The ruler sent other workers, telling them to say to the guests, 'I have prepared this feast for you. My oxen and fattened cattle have been slaughtered, and everything is ready. Come to the wedding.' But they took no notice. One went off to his farm, another to her business, and the rest seized the workers, attacked them brutally, and killed them. The ruler was furious and dispatched troops who destroyed those murderers and burned their town. Then the ruler said to the workers, 'The wedding feast is ready, but the guests I invited don't deserve the honor. Go out to the crossroads in the town and invite everyone you can find.' The workers went out into the streets and collected everyone they met, good and bad alike, until the hall was filled with guests. The ruler, however, came in to see the company at table and noticed one guest who was not dressed for a wedding. 'My friend,' said the ruler, 'why are you here without a wedding garment?' But the guest was silent. Then the ruler said to the attendants, 'Bind this guest hand and foot, and throw the individual out into the darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Many are called, but few are chosen. Who would you invite?'"
Oh boy, I wonder what this is. What could this be? It's an invitation. It's an invitation. Oh my gosh, I'm invited to this really fancy dinner party. Thrown by a very powerful person. Should I go?
You don't have anything to wear.
I don't have anything to wear, yeah. But also, what if I go and he expects something more of me? What if I don't know what he's after? Why did he invite me? Is it payback for something? Could be a good way to pay me back for something I did for him. I can't decide. Should I go? Should I not go? What if I refuse? What might happen? This is really a puzzle. Do I choose to go or not? Do I accept the invitation? This is a very strange story. And it appears in the Gospel of Matthew and in the Gospel of Luke. And Matthew is by far the more violent one. People don't get killed. What could this possibly mean? Now, we've been talking about parables for several weeks now, and we know that they don't mean what they say, that there's something underneath that meaning that brings us into the story. So let's look at the pieces of this parable like we've done before. There's the king, the ruler, whose heir is getting married, and he's thrown this ginormous banquet. It's huge. It's the biggest thing that's ever happened. Then he sends the servants out to invite folks, and they say, "No, I'm not coming. I have to go tend to something on my farm, so I don't have time to come to the party." The turn down is almost as bad as, it's like, really? You're not coming because you have to go pick a carrot or two? What's going on here? Then more servants go out who are killed by the invitees, and the king sends the soldiers out to kill those who killed his people. He's furious, and he burns the town down. He destroys the community. Now, I was wondering about this. That's his community, right? He's the king over that area. Anyway, he was mad. He was really upset. Then he says, invite everybody, the good and the bad. Invite everybody, go out in the streets and invite people in to my banquet. So that's pretty good for people who don't usually get to go to those kinds of meals. Except one guy shows up without the prescribed dress for a wedding feast. Now, it's hard for us to understand that. Although formal weddings, guys probably wear a tie, women wear a nice outfit of some sort. We kind of have some of that. But this guy should have been wearing a specific robe, which would have been provided by the king. But he didn't put it on. So the king gets rid of him as well. And then we end with this very strange, many are called, but few are chosen. What do we do with all of this? How can we even make any sense of all of this? Well, interestingly enough, there is a tradition, both in the Hebrew Bible and in the Christian Testament, about a messianic banquet. A banquet that comes when the world is changed in such a way that we can all live together. And everybody's invited to this banquet. Everybody. And so I was thinking about this banquet that we're talking about, the wedding banquet. It's not like that at all. Here's what Bernard Brendan Scott, who was one of the fellows of the Jesus Seminar, has to say about this particular parable in his book, Reimagine the World, an introduction to the parables of Jesus. The parable of the banquet burlesques the messianic banquet. It looks at it from a totally outrageous perspective. It burlesques the messianic banquet just as the mustard seed burlesques the great cedar of Lebanon. Remember the parable of the mustard seed grows into a mighty tree? We know mustard doesn't grow into a mighty tree. It's pointing at those kinds of connections in different ways. The banquet proposed by the man might be a fitting model for the messianic banquet, but the actual banquet is something else. It also points to the here and now as the place of the banquet, and to life on the streets among the peasants as the appropriate model for the banquet, not the world of the elites. Just as the parable of the unforgiving slave rejects the imperial model for the Messiah that's a soldier, so this parable rejects the banquets of elites as the model for the messianic banquet. God's banquet is something else. So we get an example in this parable of it's giving you the worst possible opposite of what Jesus is trying to get at. We always, when we read the Bible, we think Jesus is saying what we ought to do and what it gives models of perfect things. But Jesus is pretty smart. And he goes at it from a back door, a new way to look at it. And the people who would have heard this parable would have been just as horrified as we were. Because this banquet is supposed to be open to everyone, not just a chosen few. So in this case, as we saw last week, the king, or the vineyard owner last week, is not an example of God. It's an example of not God. This is not what God is like. This is so outrageously off the charts, not what God is like. The people who heard the story then would have understood it. Now, I think this parable teaches us about ways that we are in community and who we invite and what invitations we accept. And so I was really pleased this week. My good friend Karen Oliveto, who's one of the pastors at Glide Memorial Church in San Francisco, posted this on her Facebook page. We need to be vigilant in our words and actions, always asking ourselves, is what I'm saying, is what I'm doing, increasing connection and compassion in the world, or rupturing relationship with others, with the divine, with the earth, and with myself? We choose to make these connections. We choose both as invitors, who we invite, and we choose as invitees which invitations we accept. This brings us to the many and the few. We had a great conversation in Bible study about this sounds like God calls a lot but only picks a few. And I read a really great interpretation of this that points to the meaning in Greek of these words, which are translated many and few. Many are called, few are chosen. And the writer suggested that they should be translated the many and the few, rather than saying many are chosen, which just gives more than a few. The many means the multitude. The call goes out to everybody. The ones who choose to come are the few. This is about us choosing. We choose to be in the banquet. And we also influence who else is invited to the banquet. So as a congregation, I invite you to think about this story as a way of opening new doors for us. Who do we invite? How do we perceive the banquet? And will we accept the invitation? Will we choose to be involved in that whole process? I think we've got lots of things going on in this congregation that help us do that. We, in fact, have a meal every Tuesday night in which everybody's welcome. And folks come from every possible place. So, which invitation will you accept? Will you accept the invitation to be at the banquet where everyone is welcome?